When all the elements of the Fusilier regiment work closely together, the carnage it can wreak is formidable. A half acre of devastation stretching before them and a scattering of feebly twitching corpses, a grim testament to their skill. Today we are going to be talking about the Free Guild Fusiliers, which launched earlier this year in the new line of Cities of Sigmar miniatures. Now these might not be quite as strong as when they were released because there was a nerf to the Alchemite Warforger, which can no longer buff the Fusiliers with the Blazing Weapon spell, but they are still a very potent force on the battlefield, and they are an important thematic part of the army if you're looking for that full Cities of Sigmar feel. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the box and the contents of it. We'll be talking about how you can build these and some tips for painting them. And finally, we'll cover some lore of what these models do in the Mortal Realms. Here we have the Fusilier box, and we can see that it comes with 11 models. The 11th is not actually a game miniature, it's just a token. It is the Black Powder Squire, and there is a rule for it, but it doesn't have any health or anything for the actual game rules. The backside will show the various builds here, and you do have some options in terms of how you actually will build your Fusil Sergeant. You'll either have this triple barrel right here, but there is also a dual pistol version, which you can see represented up here. So let's take a look inside this box. So we can see the first thing in this box is going to be our instruction manual. And as per usual, we have full instructions of what to do with our different pieces on our sprue. And you can see the variants down here. Now, there is enough material that if you were going to do a reinforced unit of Fusiliers and you didn't want to have two sergeants, you could actually build another Fusilier. But I would recommend just building sergeants so that you can run them as individual units and just tell your opponent which one, if you're going to reinforce, will actually be your sergeant. And otherwise, we have all the instructions. We can see there's a variation here. We have the champion, which is your Fusil Sergeant, and they can either have that triple barreled Fusil, which is the Slaughter Fusil, or they can have the dual pistols right here. And then there's that third option to have the regular Fusilier. The build here is pretty straightforward. They're very, very similar for the most part. And the tips that I would give you for this build would be, first of all, to do them in different sub-assemblies. So the first assembly would be the body and the gun, just as you see right here. The shield you would attach on where it shows, but then you would leave them separate and prime them separately. And the third assembly that I would do is the head separate. And the reason is that every single Fusilier has this kind of collar here that is pretty high, and that would actually block you from getting good angle to paint that face. So the way that I did this was I primed those things separately, and then I had a dowel with some sticky tack, and I put a bunch of heads on it at once, and I was able to use that to paint the heads, and then I super glued it all together. You also don't need to attach the Fusil to the actual Pavis here. It can just rest on it and it will help you line up. It is something that you want to try out before doing anything to the base, because you don't want to end up with no space on the base and you won't be able to actually attach things. Otherwise, it's a very straightforward build. The further you get into the book, the simpler the instructions are. The models become a little bit quicker in order to put together. You do have some options in terms of flames, types of standards, torches, etc. And you even have some little guys that you can glue on here as well. Just like with the Ogre Warhulk, you're going to get that same set of transfers, and it's a very generous amount. Now, of course, with this unit, you're going to be using a lot more transfers for it, but still there's a lot extras depending on if you want to use them in the future for other things. Otherwise, we have the 10 bases for the Fusiliers, but we also have a smaller base, and this one is used for that Black Powder Squire. Moving on to the actual sprues, we have 3 different sprues that we can take a look at. The first one is going to have mostly the shields and the heads. It also has the actual fusils on them as well. There's a lot of variation for heads here. You have different champion heads, you have a lot of helmeted guys, and you also have some people with just some hair or bandages in case you want to do that instead. Once again, the shields are really, really detailed with the wood grain, and they've got some really cool details on the lattice, as well as the chains on the bottom. The guns are also very detailed and will look incredible when you put your lead belcher on there, or whatever way you decide to paint it. One thing that I really liked was the actual faces of the various heads here, because most of them have these iron masks on them, and I'm trying to get a better focus. I'm working with a new camera here, but there's a bunch of varieties of iron masks. There's some really cool half coverings like this one here. It's almost like a masquerade ball mask that you're putting on a Fusilier. I think these looked so cool. I'm actually going to build my second unit, and I might still use these, although when we look at the faces, there's a ton of detail on these as well, and even if I don't use these here, I might use them in a different build. The next sprue that we can look at is going to have a lot of our bodies. One of the things I love about this model is just the detail on these coats is really fantastic. You can see that each of them have their different equipment, their tools, packs, daggers or swords. The one thing I'll mention is that it is pretty difficult to paint all the details on the clothing if you attach the shield. So I would really think twice about doing this as one build. And I know that a lot of people online have shared that sentiment. Some people have had success doing it in one build, but if you're a novice painter like me, you probably want to do some sub-assemblies for your own sanity. And otherwise, this is our final sprue. Here's a great example of all of the detail that's on the back with the armor, the different kind of belts or cords that are on there, the side pouch, the coat, the boots. But then this one is even more detailed because you have some tools, the pouch, and there's some chain that you can see at the bottom there. When we look at the front of this Fusilier, I think this might even be the sergeant. He's got a hammer on the side and a dagger on the other side. There's a lot of details, and you can really see how high that collar is and how it would block you from painting something right behind there. We can also see the super cool pistol that you have an option to use, and there is a second one. There's also a very cool backpack here, and this backpack has an awesome sword slung across it as well. Sorry for the focus. The new camera still working out how to get it to focus in here. But either way, really cool bits that you can use for other models as well. And again, there's the second gun here that you could, if you really wanted to, maybe you could detach it from this hand, or maybe you could just use this armor on a different miniature. Next, I'd like to show you some finished models so you can see kind of what you're going to be working with here. And this idea came from Zabrium, who commented on my last video about how it would be cool to see the assembled mini in my hands. And so I really appreciate that feedback. So here we go. This is going to be one of my regular Fusiliers, and I'm really pleased with how these turned out. The transfers look super awesome on the shield, and I was able to focus super hard on the details of the shield and the gun and everything because I was doing it in those sub assemblies. And then you can see here as well with the actual detail on the coat, the helmet there, the skin underneath, the bag on the back. He's holding his staff that he uses to light this, and then that super cool backpack on the back. And I can see now I have some red paint that I need to go back and look at right there. We also have our black powder Squire. This one I built all in one piece. Haven't done any eyes yet because I'm still scared of doing eyes. But this poor boy has got to carry all of the gear of these models. We also have another Fusilier that has a torch, and it was really fun to do this because I've never painted a flame before. I really enjoyed doing that. Again, I love how the shield turned out and the transfers, and you can see again how much detail is actually on here. If you needed to paint in between there, it would be pretty difficult. So I definitely recommend doing it in those stages. Finally, we have our Fusilier Sergeant, and our Fusilier Sergeant has this really cool helmet with the visor lifted. This is the one that I chose to do. We've got the lantern to help him see where he's loading his shot when it's dark. And then we have that slaughter fusil, 3 barrels, the increased space here to add another transfer if you want, the bigger shield. I actually broke off one of the chains by accident, but it kind of looks cool that way. It's a happy accident. Like I said, he's got the hammer on the side and then the detailed pack. And he's holding this staff again to light his actual fusil. So you can see how that all turned out. I like doing the lighting in here on the lantern as well. Super cool models. Highly recommend you pick them up. Now that the unboxing is complete, let's take a look at the lore of these incredible models. The cities of Sigmar have an impossible task ahead of them. They must reclaim the lands from the forces of chaos, death, and destruction. However, these are not the heroic Stormcast. They do not have the support of nature's spirits like the Lumineth. These are regular humans, some from Azyr, some reclaimed after the Age of Chaos. Their courage and resolve comes from faith in Sigmar and in a brighter future. In the Free Guild ranks, the Fusiliers are some of the most disciplined soldiers that can be found. Each Fusilier must be strong enough to carry their gun, which is essentially a miniature cannon, but also their hardware pavises. Each pavis is brightly painted with the colors of their city, although near the end of the campaign it will be stained black with soot, grime, and hardened blood. The weapons of the Fusiliers must be loaded similar to how you would load a cannon. The ammunition is variable, depending on the opposing forces. For example, against the undead or demons, the fusil will be equipped with shells inscribed with the sigils of the God King, or made of silver, or even just blessed by life water. Realmstone can also be an effective ammunition against the arcane, but it must be handled carefully, loaded via silver tongs from a nullstone casket. This process may seem sluggish, but the Fusilier lines can fire as many as 3 salvos per minute with their black powder squire running between gunners, furnishing them with whatever sundry has been called for. This job is a brutal one, for the squire is most likely to be between cover while on supply runs. It requires bravery, quickness, and most of all strength to carry the heavy load of the Fusilier's bullets. Each unit of Fusiliers is led by the Fusilier Sergeant. This respected leader is armed with a deadly Slaughter Fusil, a 3-barreled gun that can decimate whoever stands in its line. The Fusilier Sergeant's importance cannot be understated, as the organization of the unit ultimately falls to them. When to fire, who to target, and when to stand firm in the flood of enemies beyond the comprehension of a regular city dweller. When all is functioning as planned and no danger comes unlooked for, a line of Fusiliers can make a battle a one-sided affair. However, if the enemy can crash these lines and avoid being punctured by a Fusil cannon's bayonet, then the trained efficiency of the unit can be lost within seconds. Sigmar forbid a foe were to flank the Fusiliers, then surely all would be lost. An organized Dawnbringers crusade with a competent marshal will strive to ensure that this never comes to pass, as the cannons and fusil lines of the Dawnbringers are beyond essential to their success. And that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed the boxing. I hope you enjoyed the lore. And of course, let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'm happy to take some constructive criticism. I know that my lore presentation needs a little bit of work, but I am just focused on writing some really interesting, engaging stuff, and hopefully that is coming across. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see you all again in another video.